Hello, welcome. This is going to be a pre-video to a series I'm planning on doing where I play Minecraft 1.17 and do a whole bunch of cool things. Behind me I've got some goals, rules, like inspirations I guess you could say, along with a big house over here which has a bunch of different farm ideas in it, and behind me some ores as well, which I believe you can only capture in the 1.17 pre-releases. So first off, we're going to have our goals here. The main goal is, have fun with what you're doing. Second, biggest goal, at least for having some sort of YouTube series, is probably designing a farm that other people would want to use, and then I would also make a tutorial on that. I think that having something like that would interest people would be really interesting. Another thing as well is you want to have a central storage system. So this is going to be more of an end game thing, maybe like a mid game intermediate storage for like things that come from farms, an example. But at the end game, you're going to want to have dropper lines and things from all over the world going to a central storage system directly from farms. Here we're going to have a nether hub. We're going to have ice paths for things that are less than a few hundred blocks away, maybe up to like 600 blocks away in the nether. But then if you have like far away witch huts or something like that, or a quarry, you'd want a piston bolt. More about quarries later. Create several of my own farms. So even if something isn't an amazing farm, I do want to take the time to create my own farms. For example, for iron farms, Nembon, I believe a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, came out with a really awesome user interface for creating your own farms for iron golems, which is something that I'll definitely be taking advantage of. Creating a lot of farms in general, which is, something you can see going on in there. Build things that look decent. I tend to normally just make a farm, not make it pretty at all, but I'd like to have maybe buildings around the farms, some sort of decorative pathing, maybe a farming district with like a few related farms in it. Probably plan more about that later. And the last thing for this goals board is I'd like to have maybe 50 episodes, something like that, aiming to get 2 a week, probably a bit more than 2 a week at the beginning here, especially right when 1.17 releases. But maybe like a month from now, still 2 a week, or 2 months from now, still 2 a week. Now we're here with the rules. So we're going to have a set seed, because random seeds, it's really hit or miss, and you don't want to get stuck in a world that looks completely ugly. What I'm going to be going for is an ocean, so that I can make certain farms easier. That being like a peaceful mob farm, for example. Maybe something like that, That, and making a perimeter out of an ocean is difficult, but it would be more of a challenge, I think, to have flying machines that get rid of the water than just making a giant quarry and getting rid of some rivers. Because you can do that with like a really small flying machine that just takes time. Like Raiseworks has this like very small, like maybe 100 block build quarry that can get rid of a 200 by 200 in like 10 hours or something. So that's definitely more of a challenge to drain an ocean than to just do a land removal, if you will. So a seed map, like a midst, won't be used until after the Ender Dragon fight. This means that after I do this, I can use the seed map to find nether fortresses that I haven't found yet. Maybe bastions, but I don't really care about bastions. Mainly just you want to be able to use the seed later on, so that you can know where the bounding boxes of structures are. This is especially helpful for witch huts and for the nether fortresses, but obviously it's also helpful for things like slime chunks, maybe finding additional end gateways, mine shafts, spawners, things like that. I wouldn't really care about spawners because they're useless. Wouldn't really care about mine shafts either, but like you can use it for those things. Something that would be probably cheaty is using the seed to find amethysts, or to find geodes rather. So I'll probably stick to, manually searching in game for geodes, but we'll see as things go on. Another thing is that the seed will always be listed in the description. Obviously I haven't yet decided on what the seed will be, because after this I'm going to go and just generate a whole bunch of random worlds till I get a nice one with a small to medium-sized island surrounded by ocean that I can start on. The difficulty for the world will be hard mode. Client mods are allowed. So a lot of people like playing vanilla, especially people who just play on their own, not for content or anything. But things like Carpet Mod or like Matica, things like that are insanely helpful, and it's very difficult to play your game without them, especially if you want to make larger things or really take advantage of what I would say would be the full enjoyment that you can get out of Minecraft. Spectator mode will also be allowed. So I'm not sure what this will be. It might be just like free cam with a certain client side mode or a client side mod, or in like the super late game I might just use actual spectator mode. We'll see. This is definitely up for debate, and I might not even end up doing it. But when I'm talking about end game, I'm talking about like there's this farm wall in here, and when all the ones on this side are done, I might consider using spectator mode. So I really wasn't sure what to put on this board here, and it's probably not something that's really needed, but a quote-unquote inspirations board. For this sort of video, the idea definitely comes from Mango, because at the beginning of his Peaceful series, which I believe started when 1.16 was released, maybe 1.15, I'm not sure actually, someone might remind me in the future, but yeah, this is where that idea came from, where you just set up a bunch of goals. And I think setting a goals for a series like this, especially right at the beginning, gives you an idea of what to work towards, which is super helpful. For ideas in Redstone and things in general, here are some people which are pretty influential in why I enjoy the game. Nembon, his Fun Farm series is absolutely awesome. Every single farm in there, almost all of them I've built on like different servers over the years and in single player as well, so I think they're all awesome. Some of them, of course, like the Guardian Gusher, I haven't, well, maybe not of course, but something like that is not something I've tried to build yet, but maybe I'll build it in this one if you even can in 117, I'm not sure. Secondly, El Mango, his Psycraft series is pretty awesome. Uh, yeah, there's a bunch of cool projects that happened on there. There was the Skyblock series, more recently the Peaceful series, and things of that nature, which are also really enjoyable. Razeworks tends to do some pretty crazy things, like going to the world borders, for example, obtaining Bedrock. I think he was the first, like the Prototech was the first server to obtain Bedrock. I'm not sure. Maybe the person who discovered it obtained it first and they were on Prototech. I'm not sure, but definitely a lot of crazy things come from them. And at example, I've checked out his videos quite often for, I guess, just bedrock breaking. I don't know. I'm sure he does other things as well, but that's mostly what I've known him for. There's also probably some honorable mentions. I'm not a large fan of their content, but at a time I did enjoy Logical Geek Boy's farms and kind of his content as well. You kind of have to mention Mumbo Jumbo because he's like the kid-friendly / redstone hybrid type guy who makes piston doors sometimes. And there's a lot of other people as well. But yeah, that's probably my top 4 right there. If I had to make a top 10 or something like that, I probably could as well, but you know, this is what we're at right here for now. Alright, we got one more thing to look at before we go into this massive house. I know, like, look at how beautiful it is. I'm kidding. No. Anyways, we got one thing to do before we go into the farmhouse here. Get it? And it's look at these ores. So I'm not sure if it's in 118 that these become unavailable or if it's in the full release of 117, but it's one of the two. So what I will be doing is I will be trying to find emerald ore, or this deep slate emerald ore actually, in the beginning of the world, like in the first couple episodes. And it should be easy to find coal and copper, but I'm just going to have to try to find a mountain biome, or extreme hills rather, for the emeralds. So we'll see if I can do that or not. I would also need Silk Touch, obviously, for all of these. You need Silk Touch for actually ores of all types now, because they added the, what's it called here? They added the raw ores, which is really funny, but it's also kind of cool. So yeah, we'll get Silk Touch early on, hopefully from an enchantment table, or maybe even a villager. The farm room. Sorry about that. I had a little bit of a cough. Anyways, but yeah, obtaining these things would be pretty interesting because after that you won't be able to get them at all ever. So just having a few of them at least would be nice. Alright, now for the moment that you've maybe been waiting for, now that we've gone over these things here, is all of the farms. So Lots of things. Let me F1 here. Lots and lots of different things that you can farm in the game. And this is not even a fraction of them. So first, we're going to go in the order that I think I'll be making these farms in. First things first, almost what everybody does is an iron golem farm. I won't be any different. I'm actually just realizing I'm missing something on the board behind me, but that's alright. Second is a simple chicken farm. I normally don't ever make one of these, but I feel like having some sort of small animal farm at the beginning is kind of a cool stable to have. So probably just a thing with like 24 chickens up top, and then a hopper that shoots the eggs out, and the chickens grow up and die in lava every now and then. Third thing here is we're going to have a villager trading hall. In the beginning, it's going to be very simple, probably just like unbreaking, mending, efficiency, silk touch for the first little bit, and then eventually it'll become a full-fledged trading hall with several farmers, fishermen, etc. for emerald trades, and then maybe even things like toolsmiths for diamond pickaxes, axes, and shovels. Well, weaponsmith for axes, but yeah, especially diamond hose from the toolsmiths actually. So you can get those for I think like 1 or 3 emeralds, depending on your friendship level or whatever it's called with the villager. So yeah, a villager trading hall though, definitely something that you absolutely need. Moving on then, we've got the sugarcane farm. You know, just a normal sugarcane farm. I'll probably make my own cute little design for this. Maybe a nice building around it, we'll see. Potato and carrot farm, villager powered obviously. This would be powered by pistons, but the potato and carrots will be villager powered. We're going to have a hoglin farm in the nether for cooked pork chop, which is like a super easy farm to make in the early game for like the best food in the game. So definitely something that you would want to keep your eye on and do. An amethyst farm. So it's gonna, I should have probably have farm in quotation marks here, because it's just gonna be finding a few geodes in the relative proximity of each other that I can AFK at and then mine every couple hours. It would be a completely manual farm, because that, like over here on the back wall, where's it at? Right here, I would have an automatic amethyst farm with like pistons and a clock and everything like that. Anyways, a general mob farm is probably what I would make after the geode manual farm. And yeah, general mob farm is definitely something that you want. You can get tons of bones from that, string for wool even. You can get gunpowder for rockets. It's basically the best farm you can make in your early game. Aside from, you know, this one and this one, but we'll get to that later. A wool farm. This would be a very simple sheep and dispenser setup with some shears, just to get a decent amount of wool. Probably 1 sheep of every color, maybe a few white ones and a few black ones, but one of every other color at least. Oops, that's a mistake. Oh no. Anyways, we're gonna have a zombie pigman farm as well. Zombie pigman farm is useful for bartering, but also the gold is nice for beacons and things like that. The XP is also pretty good. We'd have a slime farm as well. This is be probably in the first few weeks. You want to get a nice slime farm. That way you can maybe get some perimeters going. Can get some better redstone happening. And it's just having a slime farm is super awesome. With my first slime farm, what I'll probably do is I'll dig out a chunk by myself. Well, obviously I'll do it by myself since I'm playing solo here. But the first one will probably just be me digging out a chunk. And the next one will probably be inside of a perimeter with several chunks of slime chunks. Next, we'd have an Enderman farm. Enderman farm is also pretty awesome. And, well, maybe it isn't too awesome, because we'll have the zombie pigman farm probably first. Well, actually, probably after the Enderman farm. Depends on how soon I go to the end, I guess. But the Ender Pearls would be the only purpose of having this farm, really, because once you get a zombie pigman farm, the XP from that is way better than the XP from the Enderman. So we'll see at what point we decide if like the Enderman farm is useful or not. Because if we've already have the zombie pigman farm, we might just say screw the Enderman farm and wait like a really long time until we actually need pearls in order to make one. Next, we would probably make a creeper only farm. Like, this isn't in an exact order, but these are definitely farms that I will want to make, aside from maybe the Enderman farm isn't one that's super necessary. But yeah, the creeper only farm is definitely cool. So yeah, the creeper only farm, something that you definitely want. Just get a ton of rockets going, maybe craft some TNT, and you know, just have a ton of gunpowder, because why not? It's Minecraft. Just make bulk of everything that's cool. Next, you'd probably also want a melon and a pumpkin farm. Having a melon farm and a pumpkin farm is good for villager trading. So if you have melons, pumpkins, potatoes, and carrots, you can get maximum value out of your farmer villagers, which is pretty good for the late game, especially for just mass trading with your villager trading hall. Next, we would have a witch farm, most likely. So probably just a single witch hut, maybe a double witch hut if I want to look at the seed a whole bunch and see if there's one. But yeah, we won't be going for a quad witch hut seed, because I don't really need redstone that much. I don't think I'd be okay just AFKing a little bit longer to get more redstone. But yeah, we're more worried about the challenge of making a peaceful mob farm, so we would want the spawn chunks to be an ocean. Next, we'll have a tree farm, which will be pretty interesting. Probably not just oak, probably oak and dark oak, maybe oak, birch, and dark oak. Not dark oak, sorry, spruce. All separate, most likely. Maybe a universal tree farm, but I feel like having a bunch of specified tree farms that are better, rather than a universal one that's slightly worse for some types, is probably a better idea. Next, we would have a bee farm. This might not be the order in which it's done, but I definitely do want a bee farm, rather a honey farm. That way you can get the honey blocks and the honey combs from it. The honey blocks are super useful for redstone contraptions, and the honeycombs are more of a decorative thing, but definitely still good. And you also need the honeycombs to make waxed copper so that it doesn't oxidize over time. Next, a nether farm, just a general nether farm with the idea of getting wither skeleton skulls, so you definitely want to have it be a player killing system with the looting. But you'd also be getting things like blaze rods, a pretty good amount of bones, also a lot of coal from the wither skeletons, and yeah, just a bunch of useful things. Blaze rods, gold, and yeah, a simple nether farm, maybe Nembon's fun farm for that would be very nice to have. And finally, the last thing on this wall is a shulker farm. And this is absolutely new to Minecraft 1.17, where if a shulker shoots another shulker with a shulker pellet, the shulker is able to duplicate. And that is absolutely crazy. So now you can make a shulker shell farm that's completely legit without any mods or anything. And that's actually like really awesome. So now we won't have to explore thousands and thousands of blocks in the end to get a small amount of shulker shells. We can just bring a few of them home to the overworld and then make a nice little farm. Alright, here we are. We are on to the second wall. And this wall is things that I would like to do, but things that I might not get done. Some of them are very difficult, and some of them are just not very practical or necessary. But anyways, let's get started over here. We have a monument farm. Guardian farm, as some might call it. This is probably the most likely one to be built from this wall, aside from maybe the Trident or the Drowned and the Raid farm. But yeah, most of these things aren't really things that I would need. Actually, the kelp farm is probably pretty useful just for fuel. But yeah, a monument farm, pretty big necessity for any sort of server. But this is going to be a single player world, so maybe not something that I need to worry about for quite some time, since it is just a lot of man hours that you need to sink in order to get it done. Next, we would have a peaceful mob farm, and this is why, as we go out here, we have a set seed on an island spawn. That way, if everything is water, you just have to remove a few grass blocks at the spawn, and then you can make your peaceful mob farm anywhere that you want. Outside of the spawn chunks, obviously, on another island somewhere, but still, it would be very easy to make a peaceful mob farm if you have a ocean spawn. The next farm idea would be a kelp farm. Not really an idea, but the next thing we would work on is probably a kelp farm for a lot of fuel. We'd also want a glow squid farm. Just why not? These item frames are decent. You know, like, they're okay. they look alright, and if the darkness is super low, they can still light up some things. They do have lights up in here, so that's not a problem in this case, but they're still useful to an extent. Another thing we would be thinking about is an automatic amethyst farm. Again, with this, you would just have some pistons pushing the amethyst. So if a crystal pops up here, you'd have a piston that pushes it, and when the amethyst crystal is pushed, it gets destroyed. I think you can actually get the crystals. Yeah, you can actually just get the crystals, and when they're just pushed like that, if they're in the full form, I believe they have a chance to drop 2 to 4 of these amethyst shards. So yeah, you can make an okay amethyst farm that works with pistons, but I think you can get up to 16 shards or something crazy like that if you use a Fortune 3 pickaxe. So this is very endgame. This is much more practical, much more practical early game. Alright, next we would have a Wither Rose farm. This is something believe it or not, I have not made a Wither Rose farm before. I know it's not very difficult to do, but I just haven't bothered with making a wither cage setup before, so this is something that I would be aiming to do in this series, but I'm not concerned enough about it to put her on this side of the farms, which are things that I definitely want to get done. Next would be a large wolf farm, talking probably maybe 100 to 150, 200 sheep. This would be off very far away from everything else, just so that I can get very massive amount of wool if I need it for some reason. So I wouldn't be, again, worrying about this for a very long time, but it's just like in case I want to do something crazy with wool in the very far away future, I would want something like this, a very nice large wool farm. Next we would have a pigman bartering setup. This would be linked in with the zombie pigman farm and would give us things like quartz and gravel, which are pretty awesome to have in large amounts. Next we would have a large smelter setup. Early on in the game I would obviously just have a few furnaces scattered about, probably all in the same area, and then I would make a 32 furnace setup, and then later on probably a 128 furnace setup. Next, probably an ice farm. It's definitely not something you need, but it would be nice in the distant future to have maybe for very long nether hub lines for ice paths, and also for maybe some other farm ideas. Next would be different types of stone farms. Cobblestone, smooth stone, basalt, black stone, and things like this are things that you can all farm automatically, and things that would be nice to have. Semi-automatically in the case of stone, where a player has to mine it with a silk touch pickaxe and a haste 2 beacon, but still something that would be nice to have. And next we would have a horse breeding area. A horse breeding area is something that I've attempted once, but the goal with this would be to just have a nice area where you breed horses, get the best stats on a horse, and then make a bunch of those, and have them kind of more or less as decorations in certain areas of the world. Next thing on the list would be a falling entity duper. This is something that's definitely up for discussion, but rather than destroying a bunch of deserts and absolutely ruining the world, I would much rather dupe sand in order to get a good amount of concrete and glass. It's really sad that there still isn't a way to renewably get sand. Hopefully there will be one soon in the future, but yeah, in the meantime you have to dupe sand. Luckily they did add a way to get gravel, but we're still waiting on sand. Next would be a potion brewing setup. A potion brewing setup is definitely something that I wouldn't want until the very end game. I would barely ever use it and it would be completely useless, but it would be kind of interesting at some point to have a completely automated brewing setup where you press one button and you get a shulker box of whatever potion type you want. Alright, next we would have a drowned farm. A drowned farm is kind of something that you want. I mean, if we're going to be honest, you really only want the nautilized shells in order to make a few conduits if you're making an underwater base or if you're clearing an ocean monument. So this is probably something I'll make before I make the monument farm here, but a drowned farm is something I'll probably end up making maybe like a month into the series. We'll see. Also, a raid farm. A raid farm is something that I don't find overly useful, but it's nice for some passive emeralds if you don't like trading, but I kind of like trading. So, we'll see if I decide to do that or not. Next we have an azalea / moss farm. You could either have an azalea moss farm for the blocks themselves, as these blocks are pretty nice, but you can also have it to get a infinite source of bone meal that's self-sustaining and just runs forever and produces bone meal for you for free. Also, obviously, you could just have a skeleton farm, which would probably be better, but it's kind of cool and unique to have a farm for something like this. A bamboo farm is also something you could maybe want at some point. Maybe you have this next to your tree farm and you turn the logs from the tree farm into charcoal with the bamboo from the bamboo farm, because the tree farm needs a player input, the bamboo farm does not. So you could have a automatic fuel source that never runs out if you just scale up the farm, and you hook that up to your tree farm, and you get shulker boxes upon shulker boxes of coal blocks or charcoal. I don't think charcoal can be crafted into coal blocks. Maybe if you craft it into campfires, then break the campfire, then turn it into coal, something like that, but maybe they fix it. I don't know. Anyways, yeah. Bamboo farm would be nice to have in the distant future. Alright, another thing would be a turtle farm. This is a very simple thing, or it can be a very simple thing, but I would probably want, maybe like 100 skeets an hour or something like that. Something insane. But yeah, this is something that I definitely wouldn't worry about for a while, and it would be completely useless for literally any purpose other than getting the achievement for having every potion effective at the same time, since you need turtle mastery for that. Or potion of the turtle master. I think you do at least. Because the potion of the turtle master, if we bring it up here, gives you resistance. Okay, no, I guess you can get the slowness and resistance from other sources, but it might be easier to do it this way than having another beacon. Depends on how far into the game you are, obviously. Alright, and now we're here at the last two things. And you're probably like, what the heck, Stalagmite? You can't craft, or you can't make a farm for netherite? Well, you're kind of wrong. First, this will give you a bit of a hint. A mesa quarry. I kind of touched on this earlier. Having a quarry for blocks that you want is awesome. The raised work thing, which I kind of call the quote-unquote quarry, is a very small three-dimensional TNT duper that goes back and forth and removes all of the land. Something like that doesn't collect the blocks, but you can make a system that pulls up the blocks, destroys them, puts them into a water stream, and then flushes them towards a storage system, which is very difficult to build, but it might be an option in the future. Really depends on quite how long this series goes on for and how dedicated I am to it. And in the same vein as the Mesa Quarry is a nether quarry. Another quarry is much more easy to do than the Mesa Quarry, since all you need to do is destroy all of the blocks and push the netherite or nether scrap blocks, also known as your ancient debris. You just push it down to the bottom, and then afterwards you manually go through and pick up all of the ancient debris. So again, this isn't really something that's useful, but if in the future I want several full netherite beacons, this might be funny to try. Anyways, that's all of these farms discussed. I know that this was a insanely long thing detailing all of these farms, but I kind of like having this much of a structure to the future episodes. Obviously there would be things in between, maybe some decorative builds, but I think it would be nice if all the builds were more or less focused around the farm designs. Some of the things can't be as decorative, like for example the nether farm or the amethyst farm or maybe the hoglyph farm, but you can definitely come up with something. Also, the wither rose farm probably won't be very decorative, or the raid farm. Things that are very specific and need like certain conditions without spawnable blocks near them are things that you definitely can't design too much around for decorative taste, but a lot of these things I can do something. For the very early game, these farms behind me here, I probably won't really worry about having too much of a decoration, because at that point I'll be worried much more about having a functioning setup to get items. But later on I may go back, maybe do a second episode on those farms, making them more attractive, or I'll just make completely new farms. We'll see. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this little introduction to what this series should look like, and I hope you are looking forward to it as much as I am. See you in the first episode tomorrow.